right, suffice it to say, neither one of you has done anything to light the lamp. In fact, if anything, that's a demerit. I just heard someone's computer go off 3 seconds into it.
How is that our fault when you just started the podcast 2 seconds ago?
But we're leaving the light on in honor of Mandatory Psycho. News that just came down moments before we hit the red record button. Mandatory Psycho, 4 years as Cardinals tight end, Bernhard Seikovits. And at least based on the current roster construction, no Moss. So we're leaving the light on for him, especially since I was sitting on a piece of video for a good year or so that I just tweeted out in honor of Mandatory Psycho. So
you had a piece of video waiting for him to get cut?
I was hoping it would be celebrate a good moment. Instead, we're celebrating his career.
I can't really see from here. Is that foam? Is that tape wrapped around the beak?
Wait a minute. Okay.
So don't start the podcast saying Darren and I haven't done anything.
It's so new. There's still packing foam in the nose, in the beak, if you will. So, okay.
I will say for Psycho, I enjoyed talking to him a few times. We're going to try and ignore the fact that Paul got a little sideways there.
Well, what we're talking about light the lamp, right? It's a hockey, boom, we're just, right there, like a hockey injury, that's how it works. You just tape.
Like he has a bloody nose.
Yeah,
you're just putting the tissue up his nose.
You just tape a bandage on it and you go. You're a hockey player. You know what I mean? So, anyway, there you go. But what is the deal? They actually signed someone who qualifies as the international player. Okay.
Yeah, Valentin Senn, who works out, quite frankly, really well for the Cardinals because the rule for international players is you qualify as long as you didn't go to high school for more than 2 years and your country of residence is not the United States, you qualify. So he played high school football in Austria, coincidentally, and but then came over to play college football, started at Colorado, was there briefly, and then went to Connecticut and actually was a 3-year starter on their offensive line. So you managed to get into your international exemption a guy with significant college experience.
Okay, so for everyone who wagers at home during Cardinals Underground, if you had Valentin Senn as the first Cardinals rookie we were going to talk about after the 2025 NFL draft, you win.
Go buy a lottery ticket.
That's a great point.
Some long odds that in this draft class, that's where we're talking.
Well, you two already got to talk all about the draft. I feel like completely left out. You do all that stuff over the weekend.
Blame Craig. He was in charge of hand selecting those on Cardinals Cover 2 podcast draft weekend.
That's true. Yeah. Well, first of all, I blame Craig for almost everything else. So why not this?
Well, Darren, the floor is yours. I'll go. I'll get up and get a cold beverage. You just go. Go ahead. Give us your thoughts.
Monologue.
No, give us your thoughts. So where do you want to start, Darren Urban? This is your opportunity to talk Cardinals draft.
There you go. I would say the first thing that comes to mind, and I would love to know your guys' thoughts on this, but when everybody talks about how much they pushed on defense, I mean, the first 4 picks they made were all positions that we had talked about them potentially addressing in the draft. So you can't really go, well, why were those the picks?
D tackle, corner, outside linebacker / edge, inside linebacker.
Right. So I would say then you get to the 5th pick, which is another cornerback, Denzel Burke, and I understand that. And I understand the people that are frustrated about the trade down and what you potentially gave up. There was a couple of receivers, but more importantly, there were like 3 guards that had been bandied about as potential guys that could come to the Cardinals, Marcus Mabeau and Frazier out of LSU and the Slater kid. All of them ended up being picked between where the Cardinals' original 5th round pick was and where they ended up in the 5th round when they ended up taking Denzel Burke. Now, I'm going to say you can argue what you argue. I get that you passed up on those guys, but I feel like it's been completely ignored that this team took both Christian Jones and Isaiah Adams in last year's draft. And if you're looking at those 2 guys and you're saying we're looking at what they are, what they could be, and where they are compared to, in this case, those 3 potential guys, why wouldn't the Cardinals be willing to trade back? They say we've already got better guys than that on the roster. Now, I'm not saying I know that for a fact, but I feel like this draft, once again, was seen by some through in a vacuum, and it can't be seen in a vacuum.
Well, look, I'm with everyone to a point, if that's sort of the line of thinking. Cardinals traded out of 152, round 5, sent it to Dallas in return for 174 and 211. In between, yes, Torrey Horton came off the board at 166, the Colorado State receiver, nearly 6'3", 4'4", 140. He had his senior year hampered by injury, but he had a really good junior. I'm like, oh, man, that guy, he's big, he's fast. That could look good for a Cardinals. Everybody now stretch the field, take the top off. And then there was Miles Frazier, the LSU guard, 6'6", 317. So at that point, I'm like, But then Cardinals, a few picks later, at 174, they take Denzel Burke. I mean, the dude has started 51 games at Ohio State as a corner. He's gone against 5 different first-round picks in his practice days at Ohio State. But then, to me, even better, Hayden Conner. You want a guard, 6'6", 314, and a dude is 3-year starter, more than 40 starts at Texas. And he went all of last season, according to PFF, not allowing a sack on any of his pass-blocking snaps, over 600 of them. And then when they say you look at his film, and he was really good against the 2 Michigan D linemen, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, and all the guys he went against in practice for Texas. So, okay, I see the method to the madness of trading away 5 and then moving down to get that extra pick, because it netted you essentially Hayden Conner.
The cornerbacks room is one where this staff likes to have competition. Similar to the defensive line room where you have the rotation, the edge room, they like to have that in the cornerbacks room. In fact, after the draft, General Manager Monty Ossenfort said that you can never have enough competition. The draft gets to become, it's a science. The first round is really about the specific players and what they can bring to your team, because if a player is good enough, you can find a spot for them in the first round. Once you start to get into days 2 or 3, it really becomes a science of the skill set and the individual player paired with the needs. And that's how your board comes to your final board going into the draft. And there's so much preparation that goes into it that you have to trust the work that's been done. So if you're at a spot in the 5th round where you can get a cornerback that you feel elevates this team better than an offensive lineman would, given where you're looking at where your team stands, that's the right decision. It doesn't mean that offensive lineman was not a need. It doesn't mean an offensive lineman, if that's what they decided to go with their original 5th pick, would have been a bad decision. You're having to look at multiple different pieces. And I'm right there with you, Paul. If you feel like you can drop down a couple of spots, get some extra capital, and still get not only the positions, but the players that you like and are a good fit for this organization, that's the way to go about the draft.
It's funny. Okay, maybe nobody thought Valentin Senn was going to be the first rookie we taled about. Would anybody think the next breakdown would be the 5th round?
If you did,
I will
buy
say
2
this,
lottery tickets.
And there you go. I'm going to add one more thing to this, because I could talk about this forever, and that is, again, Monty Ossenfort during the draft talked about how he got calls in the 2nd round when they had Will Johnson on the board, and people wanted to trade up to that spot and have him trade down. They passed because they wanted Will Johnson. Same thing happened with Jordan Birch in the 3rd round. And he said it happened again in the 4th round when Cody Simon was on the board. So if the GM is sitting there saying and basically proving with real anecdotes that he will stick and pick if he feels the right guy is there, what does that tell you about who the guys that were there? Again, you're talking about Dani, you're talking about sticking to your board, you're talking about understanding if I trade back, yeah, there's those 3 guards and 2 receivers potentially that all could be gone before. I'm willing to give those guys up. And by the same token, we don't know where he had those guys rated compared to Hayden Conner. If he saw them all the same, I mean...
Here's the other thing. Cardinals have a dozen corners on the roster. A dozen. How many are made men? How many are absolutes? I'd say Garrett Williams and Max Melton.
Yeah.
Starling Thomas, nice player, undrafted rookie a couple of years ago.
You wouldn't consider Thomas in that group? I would.
I mean, but I'm talking...
I would agree with Paul.
I'm talking
I think he's
made
likely.
men has absolutely made the cut sitting right here, right now.
There's nothing that could happen that would have him
I'm more on the fence.
Okay.
I think if I could see this year of Melton earning a starting role, where last year it was Melton kind of fighting for that because Thomas had earned it a year prior. But I still see, I guess you guys still see the upside in Thomas. I think I'm just a little more convinced than the two of you are.
When he says made men, this is how I'm interpreting this. Tell me if I'm wrong, Paul. He's talking about when you have all these cornerbacks, somebody isn't going to be here. Who are you willing to, I don't want to say bet your house because Dani has a big problem with those kinds of verbiage.
You never asked me to bet my house. You just asked me to bet my paycheck.
Okay, bet your paycheck. Who are you betting your paycheck that they're absolutely on this roster? I can't, given who they have. I mean, we haven't even talked about Elijah Jones, who was a third-round pick.
He's a total unknown. He's a complete unknown. We don't know really what he's about because he really didn't have a rookie season for a whole multitude of reasons. But right now, I'm just saying Garrett Williams, Max Melton. Starling Thomas, not an absolute. I would expect him to make it, not an absolute. Sean Murphy-Bunting, are you telling me if SMB gets outplayed by Will Johnson and Denzel Burke, they're not going with the future?
Oh, I would say Will Johnson's a made man, too.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. What I'm saying is if you're going with 4 corners out of camp, maybe 5. I mean, guess what?
I think there's going to be more than that.
Okay, but think about this. Think about how many D linemen are coming out of camp. I asked Dave Sears, the assistant GM, refresh my memory. He said there were 6. 6 D linemen made the final 53 coming out of camp a year ago, which is the typical number. Tell me who's going when you look at Darius Robinson, Walter Nolen III, Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell, Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols, that's 6. Dante Stills, L.J. Collier, 8, and then Ben Stilley, 9, and there's a couple other names off the back end.
Yeah. I think they could keep 7 this year, though.
So, again, there's a really good player who would have been an absolute a year ago, 2 years ago to make this team that is not making the final 53.
Isn't that what they're supposed to be doing, though?
Hello. And that's where I think the real improvement comes, not just player by player, incrementally improving the roster, but what does that do for the level of competition in camp? What does that do for the overall level of play? There is only one guaranteed way to motivate in professional sports, and that's job security. So if you go into a camp and everyone knows that 51 of the 53 spots are set, which has been the case the last couple of years, I think you could argue. That's definitely not the case this year. And I just wonder what that means for the month of August and how that carries over into the start of the season if guys are coming out with that mentality. Instead of, hey, man, I'm just going to make sure I'm healthy when week 1 rolls around and I'm ready to go. It's, no, I better be ready to go August 1 or else I'm not going to have a spot on this roster.
That's what you want. You want that competition. You want that fire. You don't want people to just be content because they were on this roster last year. You are constantly having to prove your value and fight for that starting role, or in those 2 instances, those position rooms, start for a spot in the a spot in the rotation in general. I also think that they are going to take an extra defensive lineman. I'm curious to see now as we go into year 3, now that we have seen the overhaul on both sides of the ball, how similar or different this defense looks. Because now that you have vastly different personnel on the field, does that change what they envision this defense to be? And I think when you're looking at the priorities of this offseason and how big defensive line was, makes me wonder if when we get to camp, if things are going to look similar or maybe a little different based on the bodies they've added.
And the other question to me is if you do have to move on from a player or two, and you've raised the bar of who those players are, you might be able to flip them for a better draft pick. You might be able to get a 5th-round pick out of somebody that you're probably going to cut instead of a 7th.
I joke with Dave Sears, the assistant GM. You know who won the draft? It wasn't this team or that team. It was Nick Rollis. That's who won the draft. And you know what? It was a long time coming because the last 2 years, the 1st-round pick went to the offense. Yes, he got Darius Robinson, but he didn't get much out of him because of injury in year number 1. But then we took that conversation with Adrian Wilson. Okay, what happens if the Cardinals are able to rush 4 and drop 7? And he said that's what really, truly challenges a quarterback, especially types like Kurt Warner back in the day, right? Kurt Warner used to love it when you would blitz him because then all of a sudden he would just do the math. He'd find the open man.
The most famous thing about that was the undefeated Patriots. And everybody said, how the heck did the Giants beat them in the Super Bowl? It's because they were able to rush 4 and get all kinds of pressure. And that shut down what had been an incredibly potent offense.
And you just saw it in the Super Bowl this last season, right?
Yeah.
You saw it. They rushed for the entire game, the Philadelphia Eagles. So how do you defuse the best player in the game today, Patrick Mahomes? That's how. You hit and harass him, and you get 7 into coverage. So you close down a lot of those windows, and it's not quite as easy for him just to release the ball.
Who do you like? And I'm not saying who's going to be a better player. I'm saying simply in the prism of the draft. Which pick do you like better, Nolen or Johnson?
Definitely Nolen.
Okay.
My original instinct was going to be Will Johnson.
That's okay. You're allowed to disagree with Paul Calvisi.
I think both picks truly make sense for the needs of this team short term and long term. And we've talked about that as when you're looking at the defensive line room and where it stands right now. A lot of players are here through 2025. Not a lot past that, and the few that are don't have guaranteed money. So when you're looking at long-term depth and value, Nolen out of Ole Miss makes a ton of sense. And it's very clear that they wanted to get better on defense. That's where a lot of the depth and the star power in this draft class was, like that pick. Johnson was expected to be a first-round cornerback, and he fell. And one of the big consensus around that is his injury history. The Cardinals clearly felt comfortable from a medical standpoint on using a second-round pick on Johnson. Hearing the way head coach Jonathan Gannon was explaining Johnson and his ability to take the ball away, to jump routes, the high IQ level required for that position, especially when you've got a head coach and that position group is where he has the most experience. I just feel like there is so much upside in a position room that we have also talked about being a need, short-term and long-term. And I think that Johnson's ability to do those things of taking the ball away and being a shutdown corner, which is how he described himself, I think that can pay dividends for this defense.
Is this where Paul just says, yeah, well, I just wanted I wanted an Aaron Donald in the middle, right?
Here's
simple as that.
I based it more on the position they play.
Yeah.
Just a game-wrecking 3 technique is more problematic to an offense. What do you do?
Yeah.
And Drew Stanton said, here's what you do. You put him as a 3 technique, the outside shoulder of the guard, and there's not much an offense can do. It's very hard to slide protection his way. And if you do, then it really opens up gaps elsewhere. That's why Aaron Donald was always such a headache. That's why at times Aaron Donald commanded triple teams. You saw it in the 2 Seattle games. Leonard Williams was a problem for the Cardinals. And so if you can have that guy in that position, to me, that is a real advantage.
I just love the fact, and now I'm going to walk the fence, but I love the fact that the Cardinals ended up with their first 2 picks without having to trade up and getting a couple of guys that, if you go back over the last 2.5 months, both were mocked to them with their first-round pick multiple times, and you got both of them. That's pretty amazing.
What's interesting is the national narrative is that the Cardinals rolled the dice. Cardinals took a risk on both guys for different reasons.
Let's face it.
But the Cardinals front office doesn't consider either guy a risk.
No.
For those same reasons.
Although
they're very convicted, whether it's injury or character.
There is... How do I say this? Because I know...
I'm going to turn off the light.
I'm trying to say this...
Actually, the light is on over Darren's shoulder right now.
They clearly, obviously...
He's thinking.
There you go.
He's thinking.
Is that the devil or the angel on his shoulder?
It's the light bulb.
Over
It's the
my
light
head.
bulb. Here we go.
Over
Yeah,
my
it's the
head.
light bulb.
We've gone too
Here we
far.
go.
Okay. Clearly.
Edit that out.
Yeah, forget that. It's not like they traded up to get Will Johnson as he dropped either, though. I mean, they were probably convicted on taking him. They weren't, oh my God, he's there. Let's move up these 5 spots to make sure we get him.
So I don't want to ruin the Big Red Rage, but one of the money moments from the Dave Sears interview, Paulie Pencilneck, oh, geez, Dave, at what point did you really think that he was going to fall to you at 47? And his answer was, at 46, meaning they did not think there was any chance, even as it was unfolding in front of them,
right,
in round 2, that he would make it that far.
But my point is
it's also the reason why they got so many phone calls wanting that pick, probably.
When he got to like 40, Monty could have gotten on the phone saying, ooh, maybe we should move up. And I'm saying he didn't. Mm-hmm. So, there's a give and take there.
And I thought the Detroit Free Press and the Michigan Wolverines beat writer did a real good summary of just the injuries he's dealt with the last 2 years. So he played 6 games last season, Will Johnson, okay, the last of which came mid-October at Illinois. He had injured his shoulder earlier in the year, then missed the next week against USC, returned against Washington, but that's when he suffered what they called a turf toe. But at the combine, he said he tore some ligaments, quote unquote. That's what
Isn't that what a turf toe is, though? Torn ligaments in your toe?
Can be. I don't know. And then the year before, he had missed basically the early part of the season, 2023, as he recovered from off-season arthroscopic knee surgery. That seems to be the issue where there was the most confusion. At least Adam Schefter tweeted out round one Thursday night that teams were apprehensive about Will Johnson because of the knee. Now, he got on the conference call and shut that down immediately, right? Said his knee hasn't been an issue in 2 years.
2 years.
2 years. So there's some misinformation flying somewhere.
I don't know. I haven't seen any of the injury things. I'm going to say, one, obviously the Cardinals are very confident in whatever his injury situation is that they were willing to take him in the second round. I will say that.
And by the way, he had a 30 visit, so ostensibly he was reviewed medically by the Cardinals staff.
I would think that.
Yeah.
But obviously something spooked teams, and that kind of spooking isn't because of a sprain from last year. It's because of something that might be an issue long term. Yeah. Now, everybody can look at it differently, but the Cardinals believe he's fine, so
well, it's not fair to compare players or injuries, and that's not what I want this to come across as. I think part of the reason where my instinct was to answer your question, Darren, as Johnson, is looking at Garrett Williams, who was a day 2 draft pick, was rehabbing an ACL injury, and got cleared medically by the Cardinals, right? They used a draft pick on him. He wasn't able to start his rookie year, and the upside and what he has become. And if Johnson can have that sort of role in this defense, and you can have a cornerback as impactful as Garrett Williams has been, that is huge for this defense. And look, this staff, it's not even just Williams who they've done that on. Wide receiver Michael Wilson, banged up at Stanford. Cardinals felt comfortable about his medical history, took a chance on him, and look at what he's done for Arizona. So the fact that they cleared Will Johnson, when you're looking at the history of them doing that throughout the draft, it has worked well for this organization.
I just think it's really interesting how obviously we talked to him. He was not happy that he fell. He admittedly was not happy that he had fallen, quite angry, called it a nightmare.
Yep.
Now, Jonathan Gannon said, look, he's going to get over that. And Jonathan Gannon made it clear he wants him to get over that.
Jonathan Gannon said he has help. Walter Nolen III asked for Will Johnson's number because he wanted to talk to him.
I mean, I get that he's upset. It's going to cost him some money on the front end. But if he plays the way everybody thinks he's going to play, he'll get paid.
Yeah, a couple of his comments. In addition to what you said, I'm on a mission now. It definitely woke me up for sure. I'm a shutdown corner. I know I'm healthy. It's one of those things that motivates you more than anything else. Those are all direct quotes from Will Johnson on a 3-minute conference call with the media. So, look, if he is healthy and he is the Will Johnson that everyone saw when he was the defensive MVP of the national championship game for the 2023 season, if he's that guy, he could be like Devin Witherspoon for the Seahawks. Top 5 pick who walked in and has been a 2-time All-Pro in 2 years. I mean, you could have week 1 starting corners as Will Johnson, Max Melton, and your nickel is Garrett Williams.
When you're looking at, Darren, your original question of those 2 picks, it seems, just given this whole conversation of what we're having, that the floor feels higher for Walter Nolen III right now, based on what he could bring to this defense immediately, right? Of this question we're talking about, how healthy you are, the impact you could have. But if you hit on this Will Johnson pick in the second round, holy smokes, that feels like a very high ceiling. When you're talking about the confusion of Johnson falling out of the first round, off the top of my head, I can't think of a mock draft that did not have him in the first round. And when those analysts are making the mock drafts, they are having extensive conversations with coaches and scouts around the league. So it is kind of a surprise that he wasn't drafted in the first round.
I'm going to say, the last thing I'll say on this topic, when you talk about the mock drafts, I looked at a lot of mock drafts just to look. I never saw Will Johnson not in a first round of a mock draft. There were a handful that I saw where Nolen wasn't in the first round, but there were never any that Will Johnson wasn't, which is probably why he's pissed off.
By the way, can I just provide a quick refresher, and then we'll get cultured with Dani here? In the 15 drafts until 2023, the 15 drafts prior to Monty Ossenfort,
Cardinals drafts, you mean?
Cardinals drafts, they, in the first 2 rounds, in those 15 drafts combined, they had drafted a total of 2 offensive linemen in round 1 or 2 and 2 defensive linemen in round 1 or 2. DJ Humphries, Jonathan Cooper.
Wow.
The 2 D linemen in the 15 drafts prior to Monty Ossenfort in round 1 or round 2, Robert Condici, Dan Williams.
This was the first time in
Dumpster
the
Both
modern
low round 1.
First time in the modern era draft that the Cardinals used a first-round pick on a defensive lineman in back-to-back years. Darius Robinson and Walt Nolen III.
Wow.
Let that hang in the air.
It's all about the trenches, baby.
Maybe even throw on a light. As it's time to get cultured. Yes, with Dani. Dani, we'll segue to you.
Getting cultured with Dani. It is not just directed at Paul.
Am I the default uncultured Philistine around here?
Yes.
You got me very excited now.
I am on social media and consume more pop culture than both of you combined.
I think I'm being unfairly profiled, but go ahead.
Let's go. We've got some good notes for the two of you today for getting cultured. The first one. NFL great, Bill Belichick. You guys seen him online?
Oh, man.
Yes.
Even you, Paul?
Oh, man.
So he did a recent interview with CBS to promote his book. First of all, let's talk about what he was wearing, which was a t-shirt with one hole in it on his shoulder, which was supposed to be stylish, but just looked grungy and like he was trying way too hard. Wasn't a fan of that. So what's been circulating on social media is the interviewer asked about his relationship with his girlfriend, 24-year-old Jordan Hudson. And he simply asked how they met, which is something they have kind of talked about in the past. They've said in the past that they met on an airplane. They were seated next to each other and got to talking, and that was how they met.
It was a meet cute, Dani, a meet cute.
Was it? Because when Belichick was asked about it, you can see on the camera that Jordan Hudson is in the back and immediately shuts down and says, we're not talking about that. And there's no pushback from Belichick at all. And there were reportedly other instances where Hudson interrupted the question and said, we're not talking about that. So now people are wondering, okay, you've got a nearly 50-year age gap between these two. So some people think, oh, they're just being private. They don't want to talk about it. And I'm not going to go into the theories and start...
It's a good idea.
Talking about maybe how they met.
Let's take a 30,000-foot view of this one.
Yeah. People might not believe the story that they have originally told people since she's shutting that down now. So that's what's been circulating.
This is tangential to this. Dani knows about this, I know, because she is so cultured. Paul, I'm guessing, does not. There was a Twitter feed. I'm going to leave out who it was about, but there was a Twitter feed, I want to say in 21, maybe 22, of a random dude talking about a semi-public person who is about to get a divorce. And it is the best epic thread about, because the guy getting divorced was around our age, maybe a little bit older. And it was basically like, dude, you don't want to be out here. It is.
Don't be in the street.
It's the best thread of all time. I'm going to show it to you afterwards, Paul. But this is with Bill Belichick. This is kind of how I'm feeling like he should have read that thread.
And it feels kind of cumulative of recent videos right at UNC of when Belichick needs to get mic'd up, because I think they have cameras that are following him for his own production company and coverage now. It's his girlfriend that's running out onto the field during practice in heels, these big, like, they look like go-go boots almost, and she's the one miking him up. So there's been a lot of discussion about their relationship, and
when anyone really inquires about it, she basically tells them, we're on to Cincinnati.
There you go.
So
okay, the next point.
Right.
This has been a very fun discussion that I have had with a few people around the office. It's been a topic on Twitter. If 100 men could take on one gorilla.
Unarmed men. You got to make that clear. It's unarmed men.
It's just 100 men fighting to beat a gorilla and not be the ones that are killed.
Okay. All right. And what is the point of the discussion? Can they?
Yes.
The point is social interaction, Paul.
Okay.
If we can't talk about 100
Right.
men versus a gorilla, what are we going to talk about?
How do you both feel?
See, I feel at a disadvantage because something tells me you've had extensive conversations on this topic.
I may have been
behind
part
the
of a
scenes.
conversation in the
How
office.
do you
the other
feel?
day.
I'll just say 100 or 1,000. It's just a matter of time before the gorilla takes out every one of them. So how much?
Normally I was completely on Team Gorilla. Like, there's no freaking way you're taking out a gorilla with no weapons. But then I saw a thread, because this is what happens, of some dude who's apparently a gorilla expert, and basically said, look, you're gonna suffer some casualties, but a gorilla is close enough to humans as like there are going to be some instances the gorilla's going to get tired. If you can get enough guys on him, he's going to get exhausted.
They are so strong and so fast and have such intense teeth and big mouths. I think the general discussion is mostly men, because I don't think I've seen or heard any women think that 100 men could take on a gorilla. I think that the average human male is being vastly overrated, and the average gorilla is being vastly underrated.
Yeah.
And I don't care if these people are built like Aaron Donald or J.J. Watt. A gorilla can still take them. And what good is an Aaron Donald or a J.J. Watt if they get swung around and they have an entire arm that is useless?
I will say I'd rather talk about men versus gorilla than more Shedeur Sanders that we got all draft weekend. So there's that.
So that's all I have. You've been cultured.
Those
You're
were two
welcome.
quality ones right there.
Why do I believe that the people doing the overrating of the men are the men themselves?
You would be correct in that, Paul.
That would be, yeah. Speaking of men, the power poll of incompetence will come a little bit later in this episode of Cardinals
I missed
Underground.
the power poll.
Okay, we got a whole draft
Will that
class
be post
to talk
or
about.
after winning behavior?
And we we're
Okay,
distracted by guerrilla warfare. Is that what people are calling it online? Guerrilla
that's a good
warfare.
one.
What are they calling it exactly? By the way, Shedeur Sanders, here's another holy cannoli stat, lost over $40 million going from round 1 to round 5. So just in case you were wondering, it can always get
I don't know
worse.
this on the rundown to have this discussion. Part of me, I will say, like, however you feel about him as a player or being Deion Sanders' son, I felt for him when you think you're going round 1 to the point where the NFL invites you out there. He didn't go, right? He was home. He had his custom-built wall for all the different hats in his legendary box. There was some sort of disconnect of thinking he was going to be round 1, whether that was because it wasn't a quarterback-heavy class, and so maybe being a little skewed there, whatever it might have been, to be under the impression you're going in the first round and then not even go on day 2 and go on day 3. At some point, you just kind of feel for him, don't you? Even a little.
No, I'm with you, but again, like, it was pointed out, which I had forgotten about because it's been a while ago. But like, Deion did a lot of things when he went on his interviews before he got drafted. But he was Deion. He was
elite.
He was elite, and the problem is it feels like Deion was giving his son a lot of the same kind of advice, it sounds like, and his son isn't quite the same guy.
He didn't do any off-season or, part of this pre-draft process workouts. Like, it was not the typical approach. And I'm not saying by any means that, it wasn't right, I guess, where he was picked based on skill level or personality of the interview, whatever the reason might have been to have fallen to day 3. When you've got the cameras on you for 2 straight days, right? Like,
okay, but let's make clear the cameras were on him.
Yes.
They're his own cameras.
I'm just saying, to a certain extent, from a human level, you kind of feel for the guy. When he was, players were getting drafted. He was the entire discussion, the entire draft.
What?
Dylan Gabriel got drafted much earlier than he did.
I didn't.
That's when I'm like, oh boy.
First of all, and I got all kinds of thoughts on the prank call stuff, but like, one of the reasons everybody knew about it was because the Sanders can't put out the video of him getting the prank call. Why?
That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
Oh, breaking
to a certain
news.
extent, you are asking, right? You're bringing that attention to yourself.
Breaking news, DJ Humphrey signs with the 49ers.
Oh.
Whoa.
Because they did not address their offensive line basically at all in the draft.
DJ.
So that was very curious. Okay. All right. We'll get to the 49ers
So
a
DJ
little bit
Humphries,
later.
Calais Campbell, Darius Robinson, that'll be fun.
By the way, speaking of day 3 of the draft, the holy cannoli stat is still Super Bowl 52, where Philly beat New England. 18 starters in that game. 18 were drafted in the 4th round or lower. And there were 6 undrafted free agents who were starters in that Super Bowl.
Dang.
So that's my segue into day 3. And Dani, you'll especially be heartened to know that the Paulie Pigskin breakout player at camp, we've already started to formulate the watch list. Just the watch list, okay? We don't get over our skis. Not even May as of this recording. But as of right now, we have 2 names. The number is 2, Cody Simon and Hayden Connor. Right now, I have on the Paulie Pigskin breakout player at camp watch list. Just to let you know.
I feel strongly about Cody Simon. Hayden Connor is going to have a lot of competition to break through in that offensive line room. Are you seeing him as a guard? Are you seeing him as a center?
Guard, definitely guard. Definitely guard. He's not competing with Yelda, no. But let's see, Evan Brown, Isaiah Adams. Who else am I missing
Royce
at guard?
Newman, Jake. Oh, I'm forgetting his last name. And that's. I'm glad you brought that up, because when we start talking about who they passed on in the 5th round again, those guards, it wasn't just Isaiah Adams. I mean, if they're looking at a guy like they just signed Royce Newman, and they look at his body of work, and I know everybody's going, who's Royce Newman? But if the coaching staff and the front office is looking at this guy who they signed as a free agent, and they say, this guy is better than what we've seen on tape of Miles Frazier.
Yeah.
You know what, though, Paul? I love keeping an eye on Cody Simon, inside linebacker out of Ohio State, 6'2", 229. He was a 2-year starter, 2024 team captain, where he wore the green dot, which is huge. Now, look, that is a big responsibility when you are having to learn a new system and a playbook and adjust to the speed of the game. If you're going to also have a rookie wear a green dot calling the defense, that's a big question mark going into camp, because it seems like now with the offseason moves and drafting Simon that it's not going to be a likely reunion with Kaiser White, who has called the defense the last 2 years. Simon was defensive MVP of the Rose Bowl. He won the Big Ten Medal of Honor, which recognizes excellence in athletics and academics. And when you look at him as a player in person, it feels like to a T what Awesome Fort and Gannon want in their players on the field and in that locker room, as somebody who's fast and physical and has the traits and that is the type of player you want, but also the person. Simon had the block O, so he had the number 0 at Ohio State, which is something you have to earn, and it has been described to me as someone who is a pillar of what it means to be a Buckeye on and off the field, in the classroom, the community, and the field.
I know who did the describing.
It's not important. It's a source. It's a reliable source.
That inside linebacker room it changed quite a bit.
So, okay, I've started digging on this a little bit because we've talked about it here for over a month now on Cardinals Underground. Where exactly are the Cardinals going for a middle linebacker? Who's going to wear the green dot? Who's going to call the defense? You know the hot take. I even have Zaven Collins included in the mix. That's starting to cool off a little bit based on a little bit of research I'm doing.
It was never that hot.
He sounded pretty hot on it at the end of the Cover 2 draft podcast.
He was.
I would handicap it right now as the rookie Cody Simon, a candidate, Akeem Davis-Gaither, a candidate, and Michael Walker, the free agent who was with the Falcons for a number of years, a couple other teams the last couple of years. I think Mack Wilson Sr. is much more apt to stay the will and or an edge guy in certain packages.
Agree.
So now, to Dani's question about could Cody Simon wear the green dot? That was a question I posed a little bit, and it goes something like this. Is it a leap to call a game, be the quarterback of the defense from college to the NFL? Yes. Is it challenging to go against a Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, etc.? Yes. But if you now have enough talent up front where you're going to play it much more simple than you have in years past, i.e. rush 4, drop 7, you're not going to do all the 11-card pickup, as we've called it, all the craziness and zaniness and unconventional sets and alignments and all these other exotic blitzes that Nick Rawls dialed up, most of the time out of need, trying to generate any sort of pass rush he could, manufactured. If it's more homegrown and organic, if you will, and you can rush 4 and drop 7, guess what? The defense isn't nearly as complicated to call any longer. So whereas Kaiser White was so valuable in that regard because he had so much experience, Guess what? You could maybe get away with a rookie. Now, a rookie who played it at a high level at Ohio State and went all the way to the championship game, 4-time academic, all Big Ten, right? Big brain, high football IQ, the whole deal. So I think the plot thickens a little bit on Cody Simon.
He has his finance degree. I think if you can have that, then you can wear the green dot and call defense in an NFL game, right?
Yeah, it violates our rule, #no mask. So much respect to Cody Simon for getting the finance degree, no doubt about it. So I think it's really curious. There was an interview Monty did with Wolf on 98.7 Arizona Sports, and Wolf flat out asked him, Will Hernandez, Kaiser White, will there be a future? And Monty said two things. One, lines of communication are always open. Two, he hinted, we'll get the guys out on the field and we'll see what we have. So I think you can tell fairly quickly, is a rookie overwhelmed by the playbook? And if that rookie is overwhelmed all the way through rookie minicamp, mandatory minicamp, if you're breaking in mid-June and the coaches gather and you go, he's swimming, he's really swamped, or he's mastered everything we've given him so far, we don't need to make the call to a veteran.
Well, I'm going to say this. I think while you're never going to say never, I think it was probably likely that as soon as Cody Simon's name was called, that probably ended things with Kaiser White, because I think even if Cody Simon is a little bit overwhelmed, I think you look at a Walker or you look at a Davis Gaither and you just go in that direction. But I'm with you. I don't necessarily think he's going to be overwhelmed, and I've never met the kid. Like, I've talked to him for 2 minutes, but I think when you talk about why they went there in the 4th round when they could have gone a lot of other places, that was probably a big reason why they liked that idea.
Good name to have on your list, Paul.
Yeah. Here's the last point I'll make about this. We were a big fan of Jahad Campbell, right? Eagles traded up end of round 1, got Jahad Campbell. He ran a 4.51. Cody Simon ran a 4.60, 4.6 flat. Now, that's a big difference on paper. It's a big difference in the eyes of the talent evaluators. But when a game starts, if one of those inside linebackers has superior instincts and the other doesn't, guess what? You're playing a lot faster than a 4.6. Or the 4.5 guy who doesn't have instincts is playing like a 4.7. So Jahad Campbell, who spent a lot of time on the edge at Alabama, we don't know how natural he is with the instincts, reading or reacting, seek and destroy as an inside linebacker. We saw that with Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick, just based on pure athleticism, was one of the quickest dudes out there. Never played that quick at inside linebacker because it wasn't natural to him. So can Cody Simon make up for wasn't elite speed, pretty good speed, not elite. We're not talking Patrick Willis here or anything like that. But if he can be that guy and can still be serviceable enough with the athleticism, and he's not a complete liability in coverage, either on backs or tight ends. Anyway, that's... you
had a lot to say about Cody Simon there, Paul.
Think it's the one big question, that and guard, to me, those are the two big question marks right now on this roster.
Okay.
So,
that's fair.
Okay. Hayden Conner, we talked a little bit about him, right? 6'6", 314, 3-year starter at Texas. I mean, Dani, this guy... just based on who he's gone against. See, it's Denzel Burke and Hayden Conner, just based on who they practiced against, which is really remarkable. Whether it's 5 first-round picks at receiver for Ohio State over the course of Denzel Burke's career, or the fact you've gone against elite first- and second-round defensive linemen for 4 straight years, Hayden Conner, it's pretty easy to see. Is this guy getting killed, or is this guy holding up against some of the best in the game?
There's reason to why 6 of these 7 draft picks come from a Power 5 conference. And when you're playing in the Big 10, Big 12, SEC, the competition there is vastly different than other conferences. And you can still absolutely find good players, but you're already kind of coming in with good big-time experience in some of those games where the lights are bright and you need to go. And it's essentially, in their eyes, win or die, right? In college football, it's like if you lose a game, holy smokes, the wheels are falling off. So absolutely, the competition from a practice standpoint as well as the game standpoint, that matters when you're evaluating. You're saying, okay, you can hold your own against competition like this. We're not so worried about you coming in and having such a hard time adjusting to the NFL level.
I'm really curious, again, when we talk about this stuff, I'm curious to see what Isaiah Adams looks like, what Christian Jones looks like. I mean, again, you draft guys. I mean, Christian Jones was a 5th-round pick in a draft class. Isaiah Adams, 3rd round in a draft class that was considered stronger on the offensive line than the current one. So if they're getting drafted, again, going back to what we were talking about, the guys they passed on. I mean, those guys were 5th-round picks in a draft class that people thought kind of dropped off the table offensive line-wise after you got past the first 5 or 6 dudes.
Fun fact, too, Hayden Connor has a charity with his wife called PAWS, P-A-W-S, for a cause that helps find homes for dogs, which I appreciate.
Oh, nice.
I do think it's also fun when you look at the connections these draft picks have either with each other or Cardinals on the roster. Will Johnson, 2nd-round pick, went up against all these Ohio State guys, right? Going up against Marvin Harrison Jr., which seems to be prerequisite for becoming an Arizona Cardinal at this point. 3rd-round pick, outside linebacker Jordan Birch from Oregon. Played high school football with Cardinals outside linebacker Xavier Thomas, which it feels like a small world, right? You've got Cody Simon out of Ohio State with all those players. Denzel Burke out of Ohio State, so there's a connection there. And then Hayden Connor was teammates at Texas with the 7th-round pick, safety Keaton Crawford, who ended up going to Nevada his final year. They were teammates. So there's a lot of connections between each other and with Cardinals already on this roster.
By the way, I heard from a reliable source, Xavier Thomas has been winning the offseason. He looks swole, as the kids say. And Darius Robinson has put on some muscle mass. But I want to know about Isaiah Adams in the squat rack, right? What's he looking like? Because if he has made a lot of gains, had like a Zach Allen offseason, he had from year 1 to year 2 and put on like 15 good pounds and got a lot stronger, he is the sleeper on that offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's where this all has to be put together, and that's why roster building is so important. And again, they kept around in one way, shape, or form. They kept all 12 draft picks last year. I mean, the idea is that you're building the roster with those guys, and we will see. And I just feel like that got lost real easily as we've gone through this offseason.
All right, so that could qualify as winning behavior. What does not qualify as winning behavior, I guess that's what we get to now.
I see you, let's go!
Can you display winning behavior? You have to consistently display winning behavior.
That's winning behavior.
You got to define what winning behavior is and hold people to that standard.
Yes.
So Geno Suarez, a 4-homer game for the D-backs, 19th time in Major League history. I mean, that's one of the all-time rarities in baseball history, going back 120 years plus. But it's not winning behavior on part of the team because they lost. That's tough. A 4-home run game and you lost the game? Okay.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
I think there's only been like 3 all-time 4-homer games by a person and the team lost. That was one of them. Bob Horner, I think, in 1986, former ASU Sun Devil and Glendale Apollo great, and played for the Braves. And then there was some dude in like 1915.
Gotcha. With the name Stretch or something like that.
Probably.
Yeah, okay.
Hillbilly Mike. Something.
What's the Horseheads one? You got to help me out with that
I
one.
did think this was kind of humorous when we're talking about like so many of these teams give out shirts or whatever for an NBA playoff game. You know, the Clippers' new place, they have the wall on the one end, and it's facing the opposing team in the second half, I assume. And before one of the playoff games with the Nuggets, and we all know how much Nikola Jokic loves his ponies,
That's all he cares about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Steve Ballmer made sure all the fans in that area got horse head like hats or things to put on their heads, so like they all look like horses. I guess
this is winning behavior.
That is absolutely winning behavior.
That is the whole point of the wall. That is like there are things I think that you keep in every sport, right? It belongs in college, doesn't necessarily belong in the pros, vice versa. What I think is so fun in college is when the students do things like that, right?
Yes.
And you really create some sort of advantage for that home team, and I think that's a fun way, and it's so personal, right? It's not something random; it's so personal to your superstar.
It's not like bad personal.
And
it's just
it's
horses.
personal where it's positive. Yeah, I just.
See, I wouldn't want to trigger his brothers. Have you seen his brothers?
I have seen his brothers.
Yeah. See, 100 men against a gorilla, no chance. But the 3 Jokic brothers against a gorilla, now you're talking.
There's a picture floating around on the internet somewhere. I saw it on Twitter a couple different times, and it's Jokic and one of his brothers in like a diner like booth. And Jokic looks like he's about 6 foot 200 next to his brother. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I am intrigued. I got to admit it, and I hate to do it. The Jalen Milroe pick for the stinking Seahawks.
Okay, I don't know if he's going to be any good. But I saw this anecdote.
Okay, and please share, because I'm not familiar with it.
I hate to say this. Well, first of all, and this isn't what I'm talking about. I'll get to the anecdote real quick, but he did, on his conference call with reporters, somebody asked him, what is your comment to all the teams that passed on you?
Oh, yeah.
And he said,
Go ahead.
Belt to ass, which is a fantastic comment.
Turn the lamp on, Paul.
But
notice that Dani, I backed off the mic so it was nice and clean, so they have that for you.
I saw this anecdote, and I hope it's true, and I got to be honest, I know he's a Seahawk now, and I've never been an Alabama fan, but I love this if this is true about Jalen Milroe. At the Combine, one of the teams asked Jalen Milroe a series of questions about what he was really good at, and then they asked him what he could get better at, and his answer was, how much time do you have? And the guy goes, and we're sitting here interviewing Jalen Milroe, and he's telling us all these areas he's working on right now. To which this team said to him, are you not concerned pointing out all these things to us would concern us? And he basically said back, you should be concerned with any guy that comes into this room who hasn't played a down of NFL football and doesn't tell you that he has weaknesses or that he isn't working on them. Plus, it's an insult because that means he doesn't think you know how to watch film.
Whoa!
I'm like,
I love that.
Wow.
I hope he came up with that on his own. Maybe he was coached to do that, but what a fantastic answer.
Mike McDonald.
Belt to ass.
That was a whiplash on that sound effect.
Well, get ready, NFC West, because Mike McDonald has already said Jalen Milroe will get a package of plays. It's going to be in their offense.
Not if Drew Lock has anything to do about it.
Right. And someone asked him, could he be sort of like your Taysom Hill, like play like 4 different positions? They said, absolutely not. He's a quarterback.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. Very interesting on that one. What else do we have here? Well, yeah,
then the prank calls.
Yeah, the prank
which
call, yeah.
we kind of touched on already.
I cannot believe one. Why would you post that?
Well,
why would you? I mean, I know. I guess
why
this
would
day
you
and
do
age,
it in the first
sure,
place?
but I guess this day and age, people just want to be viral. I could not believe that was posted.
I know everybody's talked about this to death, so this will let me go in this one small area of it. When he said, I made a mistake. No, well, you most definitely did not make a mistake because you intentionally did that. A mistake is Paul having a glass of coffee here and me accidentally knocking it over. That's a mistake. A mistake is not finding a phone number, writing it down, making a plan of how we're going to call this guy and prank him, and then calling him and prank him. That is not a mistake.
It's premeditated.
It's premeditated.
And the relation to the Falcons.
Well, and again, that's a whole. I'll let that go because I think that's horrible on so many ways, and I know. Okay, I won't say that. I was going to bring up Jalen Milroe again and saying if it was one of my kids, but. Again, I know he's young, but he's 21. It's not like it was a 12-year-old. It was a 21-year-old dude.
And you're recording it, so you clearly know you're doing this to post to get attention.
Whatever. Not winning behavior.
No. I feel for the dad, though, Jeff Ulbrich. Definitely feel for the dad.
Jalen Milroe, winning behavior. Yeah. Not winning behavior, Jax Ulbrich.
Okay. Let's see here. You know what else I don't need in the NFC West in addition to Jalen Milroe? Because, by the way, Sam Darnold is getting hurt behind that janky Seahawks offensive line. So you will see Jalen Milroe because he's the only guy who's going to have a chance. You need that sort of athleticism behind that offensive line. Atlanta trading the Rams a 2026 round 1 pick to basically move up 20 spots. What are you doing, Atlanta? What are you doing, and why are you giving the Rams maybe their quarterback next year in what will be a much better quarterback draft, and you're giving them a first-round pick?
I can understand how that would be if that would frustrate you.
Didn't like
Remember,
that.
though, Paul, Seattle with their first pick, number 18, they went with guard Gray Zabel.
Yep. he is plug and play. He's sort of like Paris Johnson Jr. was 2 years ago. The moment he gets off the plane, he's a starter. You're going to start him at left guard or right guard.
I do like not only their first pick, their second pick. They got the freak safety out of South Carolina, Nick Worry.
Yeah. John Schneider likes to invest a lot of assets into his secondary.
And you've got a defensive coach that'll know what to do with them.
Yeah.
I think the Gray Zabel,
thinking like he's a Kyle Hamilton, what
Yes.
Mike McDonald had.
I think Gray Zabel is a fine pick. I think they need offensive linemen. I don't know if he's going to be next level.
He's not going to save that whole offensive line. I mean, that thing needs an extreme makeover at this point.
Move that bus.
All right. Speaking of bad,
I used to love that show.
I have three entries real quick for the power poll of
that's
incompetence.
right.
We haven't done this in a while.
Whoa.
So a Navy jet fighter fell off an aircraft carrier. You heard that right. $70 million jet fighter fell off the aircraft carrier. They were somehow towing it in position. It got loose, and there it went kerplunk into the sea.
Is that not supposed to happen? Is that bad, Paul?
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm buying it, though. I mean, you just lost a $70 million. They said the aircraft carrier was making a, quote, sharp turn.
I love conspiracy theory Calvisi.
What? I mean, you just don't. Look, is there any chance that our Navy, who's been in conflict in that part of the world, actually suffered a loss? That there was actually an incoming, and it took out one of their planes, and they are trying to save face.
Okay. Whoa.
Just saying.
They're trying to save face when
Yeah.
they could have lost it in combat, which we would probably say these jerks who just blew it up, we're going to now go
Darren,
bomb them. You think they're going to save face by saying this thing rolled off the edge of the boat?
You can't give these Houthi rebels any sort of victory, even small ones, okay? Here's the next one. I'm going to make this quick. So everyone has their streaming services. If you're an Orioles or Nats fan, you went and you signed up for the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network, Masson, right? And
It's mid.
And so whatever it is, it was supposed to be $89.99, and lots of fans got a bill that month for $8,999. That got billed $9,000 instead of $90 because of that pesky decimal point that was 2 spots off.
This is why we don't work in finance.
Yeah. And then here's the last one.
Oh, dear.
Wall Street Journal last week headline: America is battling a tsunami of stuff, and the stuff is winning. Americans.
That's the headline?
Yeah, Americans' mountain of clutter remains. Here's the stat that stood out. Some 71% of Americans in a recent survey said they repurchase items they already own because clutter keeps them from finding the original.
Hoarders. We're all hoarders.
I want to be asked for one of these surveys.
I need a show of hands. Has anybody repurchased an item they absolutely know they own that's somewhere in their household, yet they can't
No.
find it because it's buried somewhere? I'll just buy another one.
Okay, but we're talking about like
71% of
things.
people.
Like, besides
Because
like
I know
a hairbrush
I knew
or
at
like
one
a nail
point
file.
I know at one point I think I accidentally had bought I had 3 bottles of Worcestershire sauce in the house.
Say that 3 times fast.
No, I couldn't even say it once.
So anyway.
So what is the final order on your list?
Yeah,
Is Ray
where
Gun
am I
still
ranking
there?
these?
Yeah, how's Ray Gun doing?
You know,
How's
well,
Ray Gun do?
Ray Gun was temporarily replaced by her brother, who remember
Oh,
got,
that's right.
You know, for the crypto fraud.
That's
So
true.
That was, you know, I really should update the overall.
Well, the Red
know.
Lobster guy is off, right? Because they got a new
Yeah,
CEO. They got rid of him.
regrettably, Texas A&M baseball, right, not making their players available after losses. They're still
yeah.
on there. That's on there. So anyway,
Oh, you are a man of grudges.
no, this is just abject incompetence. You know, we're being this is objective.
Tomato.
You know, so there you
Like
go.
they went
That's
out
the
putting
quick.
the Diamondbacks on there for losing a game where they had a guy hit 4 homers.
So we'll put that on there. Any other closing comments, analysis, anecdotes, anything?
I'm just happy the draft is over, Paul.
Really? Okay.
What, you're not happy?
It's the closest thing to game day, though. I mean, at least there's some intensity, there's some adrenaline, there's something to talk about, something to report on, a real-time happening, where you can question the strategy, the tactics.
Did you hold your own with Adrian Wilson?
Yeah, how many
That's all we
autographs
care
did you
about
sign
then.
at the draft party Thursday?
So I did sort of do what I do best. I tried to play the dumb guy backstage to see if Adrian really knew what he was talking about. So, like, when Carolina took Tedero and McMillan, I'm like, oh, that's a terrible pick, right? I sort of let it hang in the air to see if he'd respond.
Wait, you're talking about him, the team he just worked for?
And I didn't quite realize that. And I found out the hard way when he gave me a detailed analysis of why I was dead wrong. And now they need an X receiver, and
Whoopsie daisy.
the key to opening up that offense is an outside X receiver, and they don't have it. And that Dave Canales came from Tampa where he had Mike Evans. Yeah, turn the light off because I found out the hard way. A-Dub is definitely up on his prospects.
There you go.
He definitely knows.
No autographs for you?
Adrian signed a lot. Let's put it that way. He
That's
signed
fair.
a lot of autographs out there. So, yeah. I feel like I was being set up on that one, Dani, so I took the
No,
fifth
I'm
on that
curious if you signed any autographs.
one. I feel like you're,
I don't
going
know.
somewhere with that. There's
No.
going to be a zinger.
I will
I would
say that
never.
she does that. She
Yeah.
kind of puts it out there, and just her tone of her voice sounds like she's setting you up, and she's really not.
I wish you would have the nerve to make eye contact with me while you say that next time.
Well, I mean, she is closer in age to Jack Solbrook, the premeditated. It is a little bit premeditated, So
Isn't it time to wrap the podcast?
I'm going to end this before the zinger comes out of Dani's mouth. That'll do it for Cardinals Underground here, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.